Oh, I'm DDK and welcome to my channel. So of course you may have seen that I released some Titanfall vids a few days ago, a week ago, something like that, over the course of the Titanfall beta when they were stress testing and everything. And so I felt like I might as well do my first vlog on that because I felt like vlogging, kind of a weird thing to call it. I don't know, I guess it makes sense, video log, fine. What else? I felt like it's something I should start doing because it gives me more interactivity on my channel, which is really good, I think, as I'm trying to do more content, more and more content, and trying to up production value and all that jazz. So let's see, brief Titanfall thoughts. Titanfall, it's kind of a big deal. So it's a huge AAA title from EA, and it's better than COD, so I can kind of approve because it's a step up, because it's a big casual shooter that's basically designed not only for well, primarily for console audiences, of course, but also for PC audiences. But of course that is a problem to try to design a game with the intention of both of those demographics, but I'll go into that in a bit. First really is the game fun? And I think that the game is fun. I actually, I enjoyed myself. It's definitely not something that I'm gonna feel like I will, I'm not going to be competitive in it. It's like, this is not like you play it and you don't think, oh, this is a hardcore game, oh my god, the skill ceiling is so high. I mean, that's not something you feel, but it does feel like there is enough skill, enough tricks to it because of the mechanics and in the gameplay, that actually it will be a game that feels fulfilling to a lot of people. So I actually think what they've done is quite clever, and it feels like, although coming from a Quake background and a background that goes really deep with hardcore esports over the last decade or more, I definitely won't say that it feels like an esports game. Of course not, but it is a fun game, and it is a game that I think is going to feel rewarding for a lot of players, and I think it is a step above COD for sure. So that's a good thing, I guess. So let's talk a bit about the gameplay. First of all, I want to say that I feel like it's really too easy to kill people, but this is going into the territory I mentioned of PC versus console. Of course, on consoles, it's much more important that people are easier to kill because the tools that you have aren't quite as precise as these mice and keyboards and so on. Mouse and keyboard is very precise, as we're all familiar with, all of us people who are into competitive gaming on the PC side of things. So that element, I think, is something that should be adjusted in the future, because it's just it just feels too easy. Like you just shoot at the guy for it doesn't really require any specific aiming. It's just generally just have your crosshair on him, and he'll die more or less like within like under 250 milliseconds or so. That's how it feels to me overall. But then again, I'm a Quake player, so I'm not necessarily their target market. So regardless, I have to say that I think the game mode that they currently have, it's just a beta, so they don't have a lot of game modes or maps at the moment, but it's the most interesting one is attrition, whereby you can kill the minions and titans and enemy pilots for points. I think that's the most fun, and I think it has the most potential out of the game modes that are there, which is like kind of they have domination, and they have Titan versus Titan, where it's like the last Titan standing basically is the goal. I feel like the attrition gameplay is the most interesting, most fun, and perhaps has the most potential. But of course, the debate's always up there. Let me know what you guys think about it. I'm sure a lot of you played it. So it's very easy to get the unlocks, which is good at this point in time, because that can be a real pain in the ass. The kind of like pay to win kind of element, where like people who spend a huge quantity of time playing the game get a very distinctive advantage over the players who don't have quite as much time or don't feel like they want to invest huge amounts of money into the game. So it felt actually like how easy it was to get the unlocks. It took like a few hours, maybe well, not even a few hours, like maybe an hour and a half of play, and I think I had all the weapons and everything. I don't know if that will change in the future, probably will, but that felt good. Smart pistol, it seems kind of retarded. If I'm going to be totally honest, the smart pistol is kind of ridiculous. So Not really a fan of a pistol like that. But I mean, it feels very console-y, to be honest. It's not a mechanic I've seen on a pistol, or rather on a weapon before in a FPS game. Not liking it. I think the smart pistol needs to go as far as PC gameplay goes. Doesn't feel good. That's I'm not going to qualify it. It just doesn't feel good. So the minions are quite interesting. It's quite smart. I mean, I guess maybe they were looking at Dota or something, or maybe Smite or whatever. I don't know. And they decided to put the kind of AI controlled little soldiers in there who run around, basically doing nothing. They're basically just targets. They don't even do anything, as far as I can tell. Like, they don't do any damage or anything really. They just sit there like harmless bots. And it keeps action up though, and it keeps you shooting at stuff, and you get points for it. And that feels pretty good, actually. That's actually kind of nice. I don't know if that should stay or not, but that does feel nice. I actually can't really see a distinctive downside to that just yet. The maps are okay, but it feels a bit cluttered and messy in design so far. It does feel a little bit rushed. And the problem with maps, generally speaking, is that map design is really difficult to do well. It does require a really good grasp of gameplay. And I think because the gameplay is not well fleshed out yet, it's impossible really to make great maps for it. But this does lead me into my next point. And actually, firstly, I'll just remind people that maps in every game are really important, because they change what is strong and what is not as strong. And maps can give you options and take away options as well. So maps are very important. And I mean, one really good example is look at the first year of StarCraft 2, how retarded the maps were. It completely messed up the gameplay. Once they got the map sorted, the gameplay got a lot better. But anyway, map control, it feels like it should be more important than it is in attrition, but there's nothing to force players to really move around anywhere. So it's just kind of weird. Like, you just kind of have to go and find people, but there's no distinctive advantage from having one area or the other in attrition, and there's no real... The only thing that's forcing you to move is the evac thing, but you've already lost the game at that point. That's quite cool though, because it brings the team together, and both teams together for a combined objective. That's kind of what should happen in maps. Generally, there should be positions which are really good, which can give you some kind of advantage if you keep holding it. Like, either it's a resource advantage somehow, like maybe like more bots will spawn there, maybe you can get more kills on the minions, or maybe it's just easier to shoot people, it's less exposed. I don't know what it is, what it's got to be, but there's got to be something that forces some element of map control or value to map control, because right now it just feels a bit too random. Like, you're just running around, it's a bit too random. Like, I don't know, it just feels a bit too random. So they need to force players to move. The burn cards are interesting. This could be... I'm not sure if I really like this. I'm not sure about it, because it's like a one-use thing that you can use in a match, and that can be kind of cool. But I think as far as esports goes, it's not very clear what it's going to... Like when players are using burn cards, it's not very clear what's happening. So it needs to be clear for spectators and non-spectators alike. Sorry, players and non-spectators, like what's actually happening in the game. If like, a few different players are using one of the very many varieties of burn cards, which, alter certain things very slightly, like very, very minuscule kind of power-ups. It feels cool, but it doesn't feel strong enough. I think it needs to be a lot stronger for it to be really interesting. And usually this is something that's then even more interesting if there's an element of map control or value to certain... or a value to map control, because it can be an item that can kind of break map control, or it can hold or take map control, and something along those lines. And that starts to make gameplay a lot more interesting. But right now it just really feels very segmented and like it's not tied together at all. So that's really a big issue I have. But I think the burn cards thing could be interesting. I just feel like it could be a bit too ambiguous when you're actually playing, like what's actually happening with the burn cards. The movement is surprisingly cool, considering it's a console title. Basically, it's actually, the movement feels really good, and I was very surprised about that. It's kind of hard to mess up the movement, but at the same time there's quite a lot possible with the movement. And so yeah, really liking that. So I don't really have much to complain with, considering these days, or rather, we were spoiled with Quake. We were really spoiled with Quake because movement is so beautiful and so has such a high skill ceiling. No one else who's no other players who if they haven't touched Quake, they just don't know. They just don't. I mean, you can't really blame them for it. They just don't know how awesome movement can be and how cool it can be in accelerating or rather raising the level of gameplay, generally speaking, and also giving players more sense of fulfillment. Because when you're playing Quake, when you can definitely notice players who have great movement, how they move around the map. It's very hard to accomplish. When you start to get better at movement, it's just one little extra edge on your opponents. It's much more fulfilling. You feel like you really did something, like you really have another edge on someone else. Like maybe you're a movement specialist, maybe your movement's like way better than someone else who can aim a bit better, but you're faster on the maps and stuff. It's really awesome to have that extra added facet for like a execution based skill, because these days, execution based skills are just down to just aiming, and we're really lacking movement in modern games. But I digress. I'm going on a bit of a tangent there. So game duration is pretty cool. I mean, you're in and out pretty quick. Most of the game modes, they don't go longer than 5 to 8 minutes, I think. So that's actually feels pretty good. The netcode, it feels good, feels very good, but that's because there's too much anti-lag. It feels too good. Basically, it can make for some very retarded things because the anti-lag is so freaking good. It makes me think that it's like client-side anti-lag. So like whatever you see, like it basically feels like land for every player more or less. Like what they shoot at, like dies, and then that can make for very strange situations. That's what it feels like. That was a very cursory glance at the netcode. I haven't really tested or looked into it much more than that. So the last thing I want to talk about is the possibility for esports. I've heard that there is going to be esports based things going on with this game, with Titanfall. Currently, it's way too casual to be a successful esport. It's way too easy to kill people. There is, of course, the maps. The game mode needs to be settled first of all. Like, what is the game mode going to be? I think attrition can work, but I think it's got to be much more complex. I think they could actually do something similar to Dota, whereby you can use the minions. Maybe you can use Titans every now and again to try to win map control and try to maybe have it so that more minions start spawning or something. I'm not really sure. I think they need to pump up the scale a lot more so that they can add more resources, because resources are really important in esports games. I mean, let's just look at a few examples. In Quake, of course, you have the resources, you have the items. Like weapons are a resource. That's something you can control. That's an advantage you can have. That's something that can change how a map is designed to make certain things stronger in some situations, which gives players lots more options to think about. You have armors and health and so on, which does the same thing. You have high and low positions, blah blah blah, teleporters, all these things. In Counter-Strike, you have money is a huge resource. So then that adds this distinctive element that the players are trying to manage their economy, which forces certain strategies and so on and so forth. And certain weapons now in CS:GO. There's a lot going on as far as resources are concerned that alter gameplay. Titanfall currently is missing that. It's in every single esports title because it's the most basic thing that adds depth. So that's a big deal. I could probably go into more, but I think I'll just leave it at that. What else? Is there anything else? I think that's it. That's basically it. So there are my thoughts on Titanfall. Just to conclude it briefly, it's a better game than COD, so I approve. It's fun, so esports or no esports, it's a fun game, so try it, test it out, see if you like it. If it's not too ridiculously priced, considering it's going to be a AAA title, or maybe they'll make it free to play, that'd be smart. Has potential, I think, as an esports title. Has potential, a lot more than World of Tanks, I'll say. At least that's my opinion, and my opinion only. The engine, I didn't talk about the engine. The engine feels really good. the engine, that is actually maybe the best thing about it. It's a Source engine, but they made the game look but also feel really good. That's really important. So props to them for that. But yeah, overall, I'm impressed. I had fun. Not sure about the esports, but try it. There you go. So thanks for watching, guys. That's the first vlog. Bit long, but there are my thoughts on Titanfall.